Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach. We're going to take a look at the Bombers today, but Merry Christmas. This one is pre-recorded, obviously. I'm sort of scheduling a few videos ahead of time while I've got a couple of chilled days throughout the week. But this one will drop on your Christmas day, so probably later in the day. So hopefully you've had a pretty nice day, a few presents, a bit of a feed. At this point in time, I'm probably sucking on a couple of cocktails, taking it pretty low-key. I've got a pretty random Christmas day, just catching up with the immediate fam and Nan just in the morning, pretty chill and relaxed. And then we don't have our mum's side of the family until like 3:30. Real random sort of time to get your old festivities underway, but that should be all right. But we'll dive into the Bombers in a moment. But look, Shorty's got a lot of strengths in life, but wrapping presents is not one. And I was wrapping my presents today. I've only got literally 2 to wrap. Look, we don't go too crazy on the presents. I got Kris Kringle for one portion of the family, $50 Bunnings voucher. I mean, it's practical. I mean, it has absolutely no thought in it, but that's the debate we often have with the old Kris Kringle with someone you don't know too well. It's like, do I try and find you something you might actually like and risk getting the, oh wow, I can use this with when I do this. It's a real lukewarm response. Or do I just get them something practical? You know, it's money. They'll use it. They're doing renos. Boom, Bunnings voucher. But anyway, back to the present wrapping. I want to show you this. And I'd like you to just guess what it is before I tell you what it is, based off the wrapping. Hopefully you can see that relatively well. We're getting a bit of Shorty ASMR vibes here, but I'm going to put it back a bit further, a bit closer, just so you guys can get a real look as to what we're dealing with here. Weight, it's got a bit of weight in it, I will tell you that, so feel free to have your guesses. But this is poor. There's air here, there's more holes in this and gaps in this wrapping than bloody the North Melbourne backline at times. Now, take your guess. What is it? I'll tell you in a moment. It's a disgraceful effort in the wrapping stakes. I'm sorry for whoever gets this, but it's a candle. It's a candle. How do you wrap a candle? It's a fucking cylinder, mate. I've got no idea. I'm a big advocate for just putting presents in bags, to be honest. Get a nice bottle of grog in a bag. Get a gift card in an envelope. Piece of cake. Wrapping, not my strong suit. But hey, hopefully finding some bargains and good players at the Bombers will be a strong suit. So let's dive in, shall we? Let's start with Mason Redman. Now, as we switch into a bit more serious mode, talking some serious SuperCoach, I will also put timestamps in this one because in my wisdom, I was preaching, it's easy to follow along. You can look at the tabs on the top of the page. But then when I started editing some videos, I realised, well, my noggin's right in that top right, blocking out some of the tabs. And I've got a bloody Bandicam symbol running across the top bit in the middle. So it's probably not the best for you to follow along. So if you are wondering who I'm going to talk about, Redman, Hobbs, McGrath and Draper, and the timestamps will be below. But let's start with Mason Redman. And he had a really interesting season. I thought this guy was just going to go through his whole career being an okay player that at times used the ball really nice and took the odd intercept, but would largely spend his career between averaging 75 and 85. And for a lot of the part, it was kind of worse than that, particularly when he couldn't get a lot of good games or flow in his games. But 2021 got some continuity and then really went bang in 2022. But it wasn't from go to woe. It was a real strange season with an insane hot patch. Now, we see he was subbed out in round 19, which was an absolute killer blow because some people started to bring him into the team. But we didn't see too much fantastic stuff in the first 4 to 5 weeks. And it really caught fire. He really came on the radar with this sort of stuff. Rounds 14 to 18, which was bookended with a 144 and a 152. And if you weren't convinced by then, he fucking smacked us around with a 176, 32 touches, 10 marks, even thought about the old goal, went bang, and had a whopping score. So really showed his ceiling to be elite. But if we really strip it back, this 49 was the only blight on it, and I reckon he probably barely played 40% of the game. I think it was before half-time. Yeah, 43% of the game. So there you go. He was on track for another ton. So yeah, aside from that hot period, we can actually extend it from really round 20 all the way back to round 6. It was a real hot patch. But then what happened in the last 3 rounds? What happened there? Did someone return? I'm not even sure. I trying to think as to who may have returned, because their main rebounders are Ridley, and then it turned into Redman. I mean, Redman was the guy that really started to hurt Ridley's scores and made him to just be a bit of a bit part player, particularly on a kick-in front. So I'd have to dive a bit deeper, but for whatever reason, those scores just didn't fill you with confidence towards the end of the round, end of the season, which is real strange. And look, he's about 510k, so I guess my overall thoughts are I'm not too interested. I think you could look at it 2 different ways, that he's underpriced if he can produce this middle period of the season that we talked about, but the start and finish wasn't overly impressive, and he's a guy that I've never really thought of being a premium. I just haven't felt like he is one, and I'm just starting to think, gee, maybe he just caught fire and had an unbelievable portion of the season. And I think we will see scores like this. Particularly, we need to see his role, because there's talk of Andrew McGrath going a half-back as well. How will that affect it? So we'd probably need to see who the main rebounders are and who's taking those kick-ins for the Dons. Because if it is Redman, he will still have some of these big scores, because that sort of a role just aids itself so nicely to big SuperCoach scoring. But I can't see myself picking him. I really can't. I much prefer Nick Dacos, as you would have seen me rave about him. He's a similar price. I much prefer Dacos. Just don't know. Redman's had a career that's just been strange. It's been there and abouts, promising, role player, injury, and then all of a sudden a superstar, and then back to some sub-60 scores. So I find it hard to have the confidence to pay that much money for this type of a player. But hey, if you're all aboard him, let me know. Let me know. Let's move on to Ben Hobbs, who I think had to be spoken about, but again, would take a fair bit of balls to select. Now, he, of course, is a really high draft selection. Pick 13, inside mid, was highly touted player for the Dons to recruit, and we saw at times that he could produce some really good footy. Now, what makes him interesting is he is eligible as a forward. He's about 347, I think. And he didn't hit the ton. But he did have some games where he would get in there, a couple of clearances, and found a bit of the ball, 22 touches on a couple of occasions. But it never really showed any signs of scoring some genuine points. I just wanted to put him in there because I think he will be looked at for Essendon as a player that has a lot of upside and they want to give opportunity to. So I think with McGrath going to the back line, which is the early talk from Chris Scott, I read a couple of articles, that's the talk. Again, it's December. There's a lot to go through until we really see who's playing where. But he'll be a strong watch. There's no doubt about he'll be a strong watch, because highly talented player, if he gets that chance as an inside mid, or at least more opportunity. But he is probably up against, Merritt, Parrish, Caldwell. Probably Langford goes back in there. Heppel's more your half-back. And there's probably others that I've sort of forgotten. But really interesting watch. Highly talented player. Probably just, I wouldn't anticipate a breakout just yet. He'll increase his scoring, I would say, but not enough for us to pick him, particularly when we've got the likes of Cunnington and even Fife if you're feeling really dangerous. So we've got a few guys that we can get a bit of discount in that forward line. So I don't think there's any need to go after Ben Hobbs, but he could be a guy we pick definitely a lot in the future. As I mentioned, Andy McGrath. Now, I typed in, let's see, I wanted to have a look at him because I thought McGrath, he's about 480 or something like that. And I thought, gee, where's this bloke going to play? Because to get that defensive status, again, like Hobbs, he's a guy that only came into consideration because he gets a dual position added to him this year. Now, you see more midfield spread. That's March in 2022. There was one more recently. There was one more recently where Scott... here it is. Essendon star Andrew McGrath is expected to return to a defensive role next season under the new Bombers coach Brad Scott. Pushed into the midfield in recent seasons to inject some much-needed speed, but he struggled throughout 2022 with his disposal, clearance and tackle numbers all dipped significantly. Scott is keen to avoid shoehorning players with unnatural and unfamiliar roles as he takes the reins of the club over summer. Another positional switch for McGrath is expected to be among the top agenda at Bomberland. So, yeah, that's not to say it's locked and loaded that he will play there, but it's something to consider. And look, probably when we're looking at reasons to pick McGrath, it's his year a couple of years ago in 2020 where I think it got brought short due to injury, but he was flying. He was flying, injury-affected game there with the 29, and even with that 29, he produced an average of 94. So without that, it's probably a 97, 98, and had some great numbers. And you can see the role he was playing just with the clearance numbers. You're not winning 6-8, 6-4, 6-5, and then a 10 clearance game. You're not winning that playing off half-back. So he is definitely a midfielder in this year, but as we've seen in previous years, and as that article alluded to, he's moved away from that role. And I think I'll be interested to see if Darcy Parish's stats line up and make a bit more sense for y'all out there. If we look at Parish, his 2020 struggle, not ideal, and clearly wasn't playing the role he would like. And then 21 and 22, he's gone massive, and McGrath has sort of gone not so well with 85 and 86. So I think it's not as black and white as that, but we can say that Parish has probably taken up a lot of centre bounce time, a lot of inside work that maybe McGrath wanted or has missed out on. But definitely it's affected him in some way, shape or form. And now they are looking at moving him back. So as you can see, clearance numbers not overly high in the second half of the year in particular. It's often a good gauge. It doesn't always make sense because in round 1 he has 5 clearance and 6 rebound 50s. So sometimes games just pan out in funny ways. But generally speaking, if you look at that, rebound 50s really, really low from rounds 2 to 6. And then if you look at his clearances, 5-4, 5-5-4, they're all pretty good first 6 rounds. And then we see a clear change. A bit of a split, 3 and 4 in round 7. And then we see his clearance numbers drop off. Basically 1s and 2s with a lot of 0s with the odd 3 or 4. And his rebound 50s are pretty consistent, 3 and above. So basic way to look at it, but that gives you a pretty good indication that there's talk about this role change anyway, but it's already kind of happened. And we should know that because he's available as a defender. So it's not rocket science. Clearly he played halfback at times last year, and that looks like it might continue on. So my overall thoughts on McGrath is sort of thanks but no thanks. Particularly look, he's not even that durable. Started real durable, but the last few years he's really struggled to get in the park consistently as well. So I think he's really capable. It wouldn't shock me if he averaged over 90. He's a capable player. If the Dons start playing better footy and he plays a really attacking role, like I said with Redman, there are points to be had in that position, but I don't think there's a need at this point in time for us to select McGrath. My eyes definitely lit up when you see a guy get a new position. You go, hello, he's a pretty talented player. But I'm happy to let that one go through the keeper. Or at least for now, he's in that category of, okay, mate, I'm listening, but you're going to have to convince me. You're going to have to show me something to put yourself on the radar. Where there's other players where you're like, oh no, you're on the radar. I'm probably looking for reasons to not pick you, just in case, being cautious. But McGrath's the other way. You got to show me something, mate. So he'll be a real interesting watch. And I just want to talk about Draper as well, just finally. Now, he broke my heart last year. He destroyed me. Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. I'll be able to identify it. No, it was 21, wasn't it? He gets injured against Port. Yeah, round 21, 2021. I pick him. Starts off not great, 76, and then this was when my year just went to an absolute disaster. I think on this game, I'm pretty sure I was listening in the car. Draper got injured. I think Caldwell was going shit, or some other Essendon player, and I'm pretty sure Butters, who I didn't go with, destroyed the Dons. Yeah, look at that. And I remember I copped an abusive message in my inbox going, oh, have a fucking look at Butters now, mate. You should have picked him. I was like, whoa, Shorty's just giving his opinions, bro. Let's not get too personal. But yeah, that hurt. And obviously Draper went off super early and was cold. Yeah, there you go. So Caldwell was actually going really well. He was on 66, give or take, half time, and then was subbed off, as was Draper. He was out too. So that was a nightmare. But that's kind of off topic. Let me just... Don't read too much in the old team picker. I'm just throwing things around. But he's at 398. And look, he's a bloke that has put himself on the radar. He's volunteered it. He said, I want to be one of the best rucks in the competition. And I've somehow exited out of him. And he's shown signs. He's pretty dynamic. And I think he really has a great opportunity to ruck solo and be the main guy. But I don't know. Look at this. Like a 6, a 34... and a 21, and not all of those were sub-affected. 42, 47. Like, he's just thrown in way too many. It's always a good way to just check the time on ground if you're not sure if they're subbed off. And look at that. Not much under 60%, so he largely played full or the most part of games and still threw in 5 or 6 sub-50 scores. So it's just too risky for me. He's one of the more exciting up-and-coming rucks in the game. We all saw that goal he kicked. I think he's a pretty scrappy user of the ball. He's more of your get in there, in and under, dynamic, and just bang it forward type. He's a real cult hero sort of player and plays on a lot of emotion and that. I don't really see him as someone we should select, and I'm not even sure if you're thinking about it, but I just saw his name, saw the hype around him. I thought I'll just chuck him in there. So you might not even be thinking about him, and he might end up being in 2% of sides, and he's kind of irrelevant. But I just wanted to talk about it. So that's a wrap for the Dons. Let me know if I've missed out on anyone that you really wanted to hear about and I haven't mentioned. I sort of didn't talk about Parrish or Merritt because they just, you know what you're going to get from them. Really solid, quality midfielders. But the Dons need a lift. They need a lift, and I wonder if some of these blokes can deliver it. So let me know your thoughts. Have a nice Christmas, and I'll certainly chat to you soon. Cheers, guys.